It is 9 o'clock. Call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the Q&A function of Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that pursuant to section 11(1) of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedures Bylaw number 1229, the temporary facility provided for the public to watch and hear the November 7, 2024 special council meeting is to be held in a multi-purpose room at the Tofino Community Hall located at 351 Arnett Road in Tofino, and that the meeting is to be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted via the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. No objection, that was carried. Also, through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that the November 7, 2024 special council agenda be adopted. No objection, that motion is carried. Ms. Pauchet, do we have public comment on agenda items?
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now make an open call for comments to both members present in the gallery and those participating online. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to make a comment, that would like to ask a question, that would like to make a comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function. Before making a comment, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call, calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. There are no comments saying that.
Super. Then we'll move right into item 5.1, the 2025-2029 draft financial plan. Review.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Livio Andre. I'm the Director of Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer with the District of Tofino. And today we are going to look at the 2025-2029 first draft of the financial plan. For today's purpose, the presentation will include a view of the consolidated financial plan. To be mentioned here that being the first draft, you will see an unbalanced version of it, which will be refined in upcoming versions of the financial plan.
Okay, we might need to just fix it so we can use that. Just one second.
Well, maybe while we're doing that, just a note, a question for staff. I know that you want a lot of council feedback here for things. How would you like that feedback?
I believe that will be mentioned in a moment here.
Okay.
Throughout the presentation. It's fine, but yeah, I think that'll be mentioned by the Director of Corporate Services.
Perfect.
Apologies. Technology.
Thank you for your patience. There we go.
Thank you for the comment through the chair. Comments and any notes on the presentation are welcome throughout the presentation at any point. As an overview, we will kick off with a look at the financial plan process, followed by community engagements and capital project lifestyle costing slides, and we will continue with the financial officer report and all divisional operating and capital projects, and we will close with the next steps into the process. In terms of the process we follow for the financial plan The starting point is obviously the initial planning and consultation. That takes us the entire fall, including December. And in that period of time, we have included also a public consultation session, which this year will happen on November 19th at 4 p.m. at Tofino Community Hall. The first section will be followed by a detailed consultation that will occur in January and February. And regarding the review of the drafted financial plan, that is an ongoing process that will happen from November all the way through April. The financial bylaws will be issued in the spring of the next year once the financial plan is finalized. In terms of reporting, which is just as important part of the process as the budgeting part, that will happen twice in the fiscal year. One over the summer for second quarter, and the second one in October, November for the third quarter of the fiscal year. Related to the engagement that district and council has with community when it comes down to financial plan, as outlined in the report that council will see following this presentation, there are three major channels that are being used in this process. First being general communications, as the title says, has a wide variety of tools, including social media, the annual text guide, which community is familiar with, as well as the district website, to name just a few. The second is Tofino. This is one of the most engaging platforms that the community is used with. And this is a great way for the community to connect when it comes down to creating the financial plan for Tofino. Also, we do have open houses where staff and council shares more details on the budget. We all know the importance of having reliable, in good working condition assets. And in order to achieve that, a good planning around such assets is paramount. In this process, the district's teams of finance and asset management teamed up and worked closely and together in providing a path to a better planning when it comes down to capital projects lifestyle costing. One of the ways we identified as a tool to identify early in the process the financial impact of capital projects is to group them in three categories. The first one being asset renewal. That group represents basically replacements. That is the assets that is being replaced to provide ongoing service levels. Normally, this group has priority in capital budgeting process, and an example of that group of assets would be fire hydrants, for example. It's just replacing like for like. Second group, the demand planning. This category, as is listed here, is secondary and mostly refers to upgrading infrastructure to meet increased development. That requires a bit more consultation than the first group, and an example of this group would be new washrooms that are being built for increased capacity. The third group, named strategic enhancement, as the title says, it is strategic, should be strategic, and it identifies priorities of community and council. Being a larger scope, it involves extensive consultation, planning, and obviously funding. And a great example of such assets would be the newly wastewater treatment plant size of projects. All three categories have a unique impact on the operations budget in different ways. But more so when we're talking about the last two categories. First one being already included in the budget, but the second and the third are being add-ons. And new operating costs normally arise by implementing such assets. A strategic approach to assets includes also a solid planning when it comes down to renewal costs. Such costs obviously need to be acknowledged and included in the financial plan for future years. We are in the process of identifying such impact on operations budget into the financial plan, and we will have that being included as starting next year with fiscal year 2026. Now I will move into the financial officer report section, where we will look at the consolidated budget for fiscal year 2025. First, we will look at the revenues and expenses on one slide, and then we will have the two groups being looked at a separate slide. This is one of the more busiest slides of the presentation, but if I would have to draw your attention to a certain place on this, I would say would be the yellow column titled taxation. That's where you will see a total of 5.9 million. That represents the taxation value needed if the budget is being approved as it stands right now in first draft. Second value that I would like to highlight is the taxation value approved last year for the 2025 fiscal year, which is 4.99 million. Meaning that at this point in time, we are looking at a variance of 947,000. That value will be analyzed and reviewed and worked on and reduced through work on operations and projects as we're going through the second and third iteration of the budget. Looking at the expenses planned for next year, we can see that the ones that are making the bulk of it are the operating ones, and I will focus on the percentages for purpose of today. We are looking at almost 70%, 69% operating part of that budget. Capital projects are going to be a bit lower this year than current year, I should say, at 9%. And the transfers are making up 22% of the grand total, bringing us for draft one for a total of consolidated expenses of $31.2 million. As for the revenue section, we can see the taxation groups, which are highlighted in yellow. The general taxation being at 28%, capital and infrastructure levy at 9%, and debt servicing at 4%. That making up for 41% of revenues. Second point that I would like to make on this slide is the percentage of user fees and charges. That sits at obviously includes utility charges and parking fees amongst other expenses, other revenues, and would like to point out that at this point in time, we are looking at the same percentage of revenue as the general taxation, both sitting at 28%. The other groups within the revenue area, we have grants at 6%, the contributions at 11%, and the reserves are sitting at 14%. And that brings us to a total for first draft at this point in time at 21 million. As part of the budgeting process, that there are a few items that were not yet enough. And I will start with the impact control. There are two versions of it. The first one, the completed one, will be received in December of this year. And the revised one, the final one, will be received in March of next year. Also, we are awaiting on agency requisitions. Some of those agencies being the regional district, hospital, and a library. Part of the budgeting process is also an accurate estimation of utility consumptions and revenues. And that will be done more accurately when fiscal year closes at the end of December, meaning that we will have all the information for the full year, meaning that whatever estimations we have at this point, by the time the year ends, we will be even more accurate in our projections. Also, during the audit process for 2024 financials, more insightful information on a current year will be revealed, which will be used for further making a more accurate 2025 budget. Another part of budgeting is recalibration of projects. And that's a three-pronged approach, meaning that we have to confirm funding, obviously. We have to finalize the estimates and gauge capacity needs, and all that brings us to a decision on which projects are going forward, which are not, and being put forward within the financial plan for the council. And in terms of economic considerations at this point, I can say we have a dynamic economic landscape. Canadian dollar, it's fairly weak at this point. Interest rates are continuing to go down, and we're monitoring the economic landscape and how that might affect this area, our community. Moving to divisional section of the presentation, I will continue by presenting the corporate services and bringing on the screen the relevant variances for proposed budget versus adopted budget. The proposed budget is what we are presenting, and the adopted budget was what was approved last year. To be mentioned that this is brought forward in first draft. We will go and have a look at the administration budget first, and then at the council for variances. And mentioning also that the two other divisions, community services and infrastructure and public works, will bring their relevant variances in the next budget meeting. For the administration group of expenses and revenues for next year being proposed, looking at what was adopted last year for 2025, in terms of revenue, we are looking at a change in terms of rental revenue. We do have property that will provide the rental revenue for the district, and in terms of expenses, we have a 10,000 variance coming in the form of professional services that relates to various consultants from property appraisal, procurement advisor, freedom of information consultants. The 15.5 relates to the rental revenue above. And the $10,000 that you can see under elections, that relates to the electoral machine that we will be purchasing next year in order to be used in 2026 for the elections. For the council budget, again, for today, we are looking at the relevant variances, and in the next meeting, we can go in more detail if need be on expenses, but I would like to point out three of them at this point. We are looking at a new grants application that we have, that is the community to community grant, that is for $30,000. Under expenses, we have a reduction that came from moving the WildSafe BC grant to the community services budget. So you see here that being reduced, but same grants, you will see it on the community services when the time comes for them to present in the next meeting. The 24,000 expense increase, that has two parts of it. One is 20,000 related to the community grant, which is mentioned above, as well as additional 4,000 in theater rental expenses, because we will be using that expense a bit more, and that comes with an increase in cost. At this point, I'd like to make a pause if council has any questions or comments on the numbers that were presented by this point.
I can open it up to council comments on this particular, up to this point.
They very straightforward.
Okay, I do have a comment on this. I think council was really clear to the last financial planning that we wanted to see increases in council initiatives and advocacies. And it looks like it's so I just want clarity. The WildSafe BC, I think you're going to cover this a little later, has been taken out of council initiatives, and the 95, the increase for council expenses actually includes a $20,000 community to community grant. Is that right?
Correct. So we do have the revenue shown upstairs for $30,000 for community to community, and we are projecting out of the 30,000, 20,000 will be spent next fiscal under the council expenses. The 3,800 is moving to the community services budget, so that will be present. It is not eliminated; it is just moved into the community services budget, and it will be shown under that group of expenses.
May I add a little bit more information? So as council is aware, we did apply for a community to community grant in 2024. At the point in time where we developed this financial plan, we anticipated that 10,000 of that would be spent in 24, and then the 10,000 is projected to be spent in 25. That's likely going to change around a little bit. And we also intend on applying for another $20,000 next year. So this actually includes a second grant application. So the full 30,000 that's coming in as grant revenue is showing under council expenditures at the full 30,000. There's a few variances in that budget, and we can provide more detail to council likely after the meeting, because we don't have that level of detail here just on hand. But I just want to remind that when we're looking at this today, the 2025 adopted budget included increases over the 2024 budget. And what's being proposed today is just sort of a variance to what was initially approved in the financial plan, that like the current financial plan. So any changes or variances in that is what we've gone over. So the advocacy remains the same at $10,000. The WildSafe contract has moved out, and we've included some additional expenditures for the council to council grant.
Okay, sorry, just to clarify there. So the adopted budget was 71,000 for council expenses. That did not include grants or transfers from reserve. The 95,000 does include $30,000 Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Is that not a relevant decrease of $10,000?
There would be, and so I'll have to go back sort of in the detail and maybe we can email council out what the finer details are. We're also gonna present this in greater detail once we get the final 2024 numbers, so this is not necessarily indicative of where we're gonna land with this budget.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this because I don't want a decrease in council expenses, knowing our expenses have gone up and it was a specific request of council, so. That's my comment.
Yes, and we did have strategic planning in 2024, but that shouldn't be showing in the adopted version, so offhand, I think it's difficult for us to sort of say what that decrease is actually related to, but if it was for a specific line item that wouldn't necessarily carry on to the following year, then it wouldn't show.
Okay, great.
So we can send more detail out later.
I'd like to see that. Thank you.
And at this point, I would like to turn the presentation to Director of Community Development.
That's all. And the first project I'm going to present is sound baffles for this room. This room did have sound baffles initially installed, but as we've been programming space, particularly with a very successful seniors program, we've had a lot of feedback that the acoustics are still not ideal and are problematic for folks in the room, for particularly for quieter meetings. And I know even with these meetings, we've noticed that the acoustics are not as great as they could be. So this is a new project proposed to be funded by taxation. Public art at the new tennis and pickleball courts. This is also a new project to be funded by the Public Art Reserve, which is primarily funded through the RMI program. There are a lot of blank vertical concrete walls around the new tennis and basketball court spaces. And this would see sort of a planned installation there to make the space more vibrant and ultimately prevent other things from cropping up on those walls. I'm going to present the planning services projects, and I just want to highlight for council that staff prepares this budget in August. And so these projects were proposed assuming a fully resourced planning services department. So as we get into further detail through the budget process, some of these timelines may change just to be realistic about what we can accomplish in 2025. So this is the small but mighty dark skies policy, which council does hear from folks in the community about from time to time. This was approved already to be funded by taxation in 2025. And we still hope to do this, and we know we have heard from folks in the community recently on this. Municipal forest strategy, again, this is an approved project, no change that is proposed for 2025. Housing needs assessment report. So this is actually for 2026. The housing needs assessment was completed in 2021. It's best practice to, or actually a requirement to update those every 5 years. In fact, this year we had a new requirement from the province that we needed to create an interim housing needs report. That work is underway. It is required by the province to be completed by December 31st of this year, and we just received the draft of that report. Mobile population census. So this is a project that is scheduled to reoccur every 2 years. So we pulled the most recent mobile population census data. It's through TELUS. They provide the data for us, and we did that at the beginning of this year. We're actually able to use that information to update our interim housing needs assessment. So that is scheduled to happen again in 2026. There would be no census in 2027, and then it would reoccur again in 2028. Again, this is previously approved. A visual community plan update. So this is approved for 2025, and I'll just flag that this was proposed and approved for 2025, assuming that the zoning bylaw review would happen in 2024.
into 2025. With timelines shifting around that project, there's a high likelihood that we'll see this one move out to a future year. Now I'm going to move on to EP projects. So the Coastal Flooding and Tsunami Inundation Review, again, a previously approved project. We're able to fund this project through Tla-o-qui-aht funding, which is local government climate action, I want to say program funding. And so this would happen in 2025. Tsunami Risk Mitigation Review, again, funded by the Tla-o-qui-aht funding, and is just intended to update our plans, which are done regularly every 5 years as best practice. Community Recovery Framework, this was originally planned for 2024, but due to delays with the province finalizing changes to the Emergency Program Act, it had been moved out to 2025, and this is funded by taxation at a cost of $10 million. Emergency beach markers. This is a new project. It's a one-time project to develop and install markers that is visible from the beach so that folks on the beach are able to identify their location in the event of emergency when contacting first responders. And this one is currently proposed to be funded by taxation. We are going to be developing a new resort development strategy, and emergency preparedness projects where it relates to visitors are eligible projects in our current resort development strategy. So if those projects are acceptable again in the new RDS under the province's new agreement terms, this may be able to be funded with RMI. The CEPF grant. So there's a number of grants here. These are the UBCM grants that we've been successful in receiving a number of years. So there seem to be more of these grants and we are applying for them. So this one is for ESS, so not our emergency program team, but emergency social services team, training and recruitment. It's a $30,000 project and is 100% funded if we are successful by the UBCM grant. Also a new project, EP training and equipment. Again, this is a grant that we have been successful in receiving, I think, over a dozen times over the past number of years. So fully funded by the grant and supports the training of our emergency operations. This is a new project and is again funded by a UBCM grant to develop a better or refined emergency notification and outreach plan to notify the community in the event of emergencies or disasters, again fully funded by grant. Another UBCM grant, Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan. Certainly after the Cameron Lake fire, it's topical to consider the risk of wildfires and how our community may respond. And this would support that work. Again, 100% funded by grant. This is an RMI project. So we are in the third year of a 3-year contract for the seasonal shuttle service. The landscape has changed somewhat on the West Coast with West Coast Transit coming on board. And so we're going to take a close look through the next RDS and work with stakeholders and community tourism stakeholders around whether this is a project that wants to continue beyond this RDS term. Because it is a very high cost. It's a high proportion of the services budget that we're able to spend of the funding that we received from RMI. Through the RMI program, and there's other things that we could spend this money on if we were not required to continue with the shuttle service. Firefighter benefits. So this is a new project. So currently the firefighters pay for their own health benefits through the association revenue received from the calls they attend. So they receive a nominal amount of money from the district every time they attend a call or a practice. And they're using that money currently to pay for their own health benefits. So this project would propose to reimburse the society who currently administers their health plans. The $95,000 value, that is over 5 years. So it's approximately $17,000, $18,000 a year that we would propose to reimburse from the society, and that would allow the society to put those funds into other projects that are also priorities for the society, but also for the community, such as the fire training grants. This is another UBCM grant. This is the fire stream of grants that are offered, and it's fairly new. We've been successful with this funding stream once before. And so this is a new project for firefighting equipment, turnout gear, et cetera. If successful, this would be in addition to the turnout gear that we budgeted to purchase this year for the department. And again, fully funded by grant. Capital projects, 4th Street Public Washroom. Obviously, we're investing pretty heavily at the school field right now. And that area is going to be busier and busier. We also have a growing downtown program, RV parking in that area. So there is a need for a washroom at that location. We have installed a couple of washrooms in 2024. One of them is nearing completion on Mackenzie Beach Road, a 2-stall basic washroom. And that's the model that we would look to install at this location as well. And it would be installed on the public property, so it'd be on the public road right away, would service downtown, paid parking areas downtown, but also support any kind of events or programming on the school field. And I'm not fully proposed to be fully funded with our money. Multi-use path upgrades. We were done. I might have told you that we were done, but we've identified another section of older path that is it is in a deteriorating condition, and that's it's between the landmarks, Ehlers Road, so Co-op Gas Bar, approximately to Industrial Way. It's a busier section. There's a lot of traffic in that section, and we're also finding that there really wants to be a transit stop there, and there is not. And so we could support the West Coast Transit Service by upgrading the path at that location, which would meet our needs, as well as installing a transit stop at that location. And that's again 100% funded by RMI. SCBA path replacement. This is a fire department project. This was previously approved and involved the replacement of SCBA packs that are beyond their service life. And this complements or follows, aligns with the installation of the air filling station that was purchased this year and has recently been installed at the fire hall. Again, previously approved, and this is funded through C&I levy as it is a replacement of existing equipment. And I'll just talk through a couple of sort of outstanding items in this division. Obviously, the manager of planning services position is still vacant, and that is impacting our ability to deliver on some of these larger planning projects. We still will need to reconcile 2024 RMI expenditures. That gives us an idea of what kind of funding we can carry forward to next year. We've had a number of projects that have actually come in under budget, so those funds can be put into new projects next year. New resort development strategy. So our current strategy takes us to March of 2025. We don't expect the provinces communicated their timeline to have an approved RDS for 2025 to 2027 until about July. So there'll be a bit of a limbo period there. Typically, we're about a year behind in spending our funding, which carries us through. So there isn't sort of a pause in projects there. We're usually able to deliver on those continuously. And then design and cost estimates. We have a couple of projects that are still out in the design phase, and we'll be getting refined cost estimates. For example, the multi-use path with the transit stop. We don't have all of the details on that yet. So when we present the second draft of the budget, I should have more information for council. That is my last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions before handing it over to Mr. Rogers.
Super. Thank you, Mr. Foma. Okay, let's Ms. Foma, let's go through council. Questions, comments? Let's start at that end.
I just had one question regarding the multi-use path. And I don't know if it's the appropriate time to answer it or ask this, but has there been any like inclination to like improve them up, or is it even possible from like in front of what is it? The old way west, what is Tofino Resort and Marina? Yeah, that section.
So the multi-use path at that location was upgraded in 2022. We received a tourism dependent lease grant, $800,000, and that's when that separated bike lane with our famous way of delineators went in. So that section has been recently upgraded. Is that the section you're?
I think I mean from like there to like in front of the Ike buildings, and I think it probably my assumption is it wouldn't be possible to widen it there, but.
Okay, so I think what you're referring to is sort of like the last mile on the way into downtown.
Yeah.
So that section is somewhat constrained by the right of way there, and because there's a number of driveways. Through our cycling network plan, the MUP is actually supposed to, this was a way to address these constraints, turn and go up Gibson Street. And so that's why you see the very wide and up on that street. It was to direct people away from the congested 4th and Campbell intersection and into Gibson Street, where they are to continue along and turn down 3rd. Obviously, it's not completely built out, but that's the idea there. But I hear your point that there could be some improvements along that last mile section.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought was going on there. And yeah, I just had a member of the public bring it up to me at a different meeting, so I thought I'd bring it back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments, Councillor Anderson? Thomas?
I didn't have any, but now I do. Something to maybe add to that, not really related to this particular budget, but it might be time to look at creating them up on both sides of the highway in that last mile section. To have two narrow maps basically on both sides of the highway, up to about Gateway. I think it would relieve some of the pressure, and also it's a little bit problematic when there's a bike lane up to 4th Street and then there's really nothing much after that. So it would create a better pedestrian and bike corridor if that was extended approximately to Gateway or Pfeiffer or something. That's my additional comment.
Councillor Thompson? No?
I had a question through the chair, regarding our municipal inundation zone projects and then tsunami planning. In what area would that fall? We've seen a lot of heavy rainfall recently and flooding in new areas that's maybe making us aware through development that water flow patterns have changed. Which budget would those fall under? And has that been sort of assessed yet?
Through the chair, I'm looking sideways at my colleague over here. There is a piece of work happening currently around Mackenzie Creek, which is in that area. Certainly staff and the community are very aware of the flooding in that area, but I don't know if we have any other pearls of wisdom there, Aaron, or anything to add.
Thanks, well, through the chair, to Councilor Sawyer. I can answer that. It's not directly related to anything I'm just presenting today, but happy to talk about that storm event at some point. We have done an internal staff review. We haven't found any new areas. It's just the old areas. It was again a very intense storm. We have some opportunities that we think we can improve a little bit, but a lot of it's going to be more longer term stormwater upgrades, which are going to be fairly costly. And the first step in that process, which we can talk a little bit about through the budget process, is developing a stormwater plan. Right now, we have put together system of culverts and pipes that were stored on the ground, buried and stuff, but there's no really rhyme or reason to it. And so what the first thing we have to do is kind of come back up top and think, okay, what does this actually look like? What are the areas that we can actually direct stormwater? What are the processes to do that? What permits are we getting from the province? And then start building down from that. There is an ongoing project. We're working with Redfish that we received a grant. I think it's $175,000 this year from CEPF to look at the Mackenzie Creek system in particular in terms of disaster mitigation. And so we're hoping from that project, I believe it might be happening this week, but there will be a bunch of geomorphologists, biologists, stream people in and around the Mackenzie Creek area looking at it from both an environmental perspective, but also from disaster mitigation, which relates back to stormwater a lot of times. So hopefully we'll have a bunch of new information on that. Hopefully we'll have some projects identified, at least for that area. But as you indicated, there are a number of other areas which have flooded consistently over the years on big storms that need addressing as well. So I don't know if I talked myself around in a circle there, but happy to just talk about the storm anytime.
Cool. Thank you very much.
I think it's a better answer than I could have
Super.
provided on that one.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot. It's everyone, a lot of people's minds. I have a couple comments just to piggyback onto the bike lane. This is just a comment, like we're finished, but I do think the last mile is significant. And I understand that the rest of Campbell Street, when it's redeveloped, will include bike and infrastructure So that part is already in the mix, and yeah, I have to reiterate that last mile is quite problematic for people on bikes and pedestrians. I have a couple comments. One, happy to see the official community plan update moved out to 2026, noting that the rezoning process will be still underway, I'm sure. Emergency beach markers. I know that there's initiatives from Parks Canada and you clue at the region on a Coast Smart initiative. I know it's $10,000, but I'm wondering if if there might be some discussion of how that may fit within that framework, but just something to think about. Seasonal shuttle. It's $250,000. I think now that we have West Coast Transit and BC Transit is taking over in March, and that service is going to expand in time and service, amount of buses, etc. I think that it's time to re-examine what I see as potentially competing service, so that we're paying for the same thing twice. And so in my opinion, if there's any way that we could move that $250,000 into perhaps offsetting the taxation for BC Transit, that would be, I think that would be a big win for the community. I'm not sure how that works. I know RMI is tourism centered, but we are, if there was, say, a transit increase specifically, I know BC Transit highlighted the need for an increase directly related to tourism. That might be a good pitch, and I'm sure you know all about that. But that would be my wish personally, to see that not compete with what we're already paying for now. So maybe a comment from council on that.
Yeah, I agree that it's time to sort of examine what it does, maybe either shift what it does or shift some funding or something like that. So then, and just as we examine that, any data that we've collected on ridership, or if we know if there's been a change in ridership since the transit service has been introduced, that would be good to have some data backing that examination.
Thank you. Yeah, staff can definitely have a closer look at that, and we have been in communication with Transit about their service levels as well.
And just one more comment on that. It's not only just about money, but it's also about competing for service. It's also competing for contractors, and the West Coast Transit Service is struggling significantly with contractors. So I'm gonna throw that out. That's it for me.
If there are no further questions, we'll turn it over to the Director of Infrastructure and Public Works.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Today I'll be presenting our operating and capital projects for the first draft of the budget. I think the one large takeaway that I've been thinking about all week is how few projects we have in comparison to previous years. And you'll probably see them going by slides, but again, for infrastructure and public works, this is largely going to be a planning and design year. We've done a lot of work over the last 18 months, and it's some time to sort of step back and think about things a little bit. The DCC bylaw is a project that council would have seen before. It's got a fairly large budget of $150,000, and it goes out over a number of years. It's funded through a variety of sources, dependent on what DCC bylaw we're working on. This is a project that might come back to council for the second draft that's significantly changed. So in terms of timelines are likely going to be changed, budget will likely be different, and you may see the removal of certain DCC projects. So the big one here for us is the housing DCC. This is something that only Whistler does. It's something that we've been looking at undertaking in Tofino for a number of years. But with our limits to growth policy and how that may affect future commercial development, this may be a project that's we're just not ready for at this time. So we'll be talking a little bit about the housing DCC. The water DCC was intended to be complete this year, but we're actually have to wait for the source feasibility study to be complete so we can determine what the next source of water is for Tofino, and that's a big part of that DCC bylaw. So that's pushed to 25. We're expected to do the sewer DCC. We're looking at sewer master plan and a number of other projects that's going to maybe require that to be pushed to 26. And then we may push some of the other projects at the same time, so Dorm, Parks, and Road. DCC bylaws to do this correctly, and this is what we're doing with water. You really need an asset management plan in place to kind of understand what we're doing over the next 20 years, or sorry, say strategic plan and then the asset management plan. So this is as it is for this version, but again, it may be look a little bit different the next time council sees it. And again, this was previously approved. 23, it was the first time council might have seen it. I may stop on each of my slides because there's a lot of information in them, and stop for questions there if that's okay with everyone.
Sure, I'm going to open it up for council for questions, comments on this. I think it makes sense, honestly, that this gets pushed out, noting that there's a whole bunch of variables, and the limits to growth policy is a pretty key document that has to be in place. So I'd be happy to see this, and noting we have, $1 million to carve off, or et cetera, something like that.
And the thing about development cost charges is like we get DCCs from all types of development. We receive a significant amount from commercial and commercial competition development, and if that's going to change over the next 5 or 10 years, the impetus to get this done sooner rather than later is also removed a little bit. Not that we don't need to do it, but we want to be set up for the next growth period of society, but it's something that's not as critical as it once was.
Was there something going on provincially about changing DCCs around housing?
To Chair Council, I heard something similar from Ms. Akiana about DCCs, but I haven't heard anything formally from the province or seen anything, but I understand there may be some conversations around it.
I don't know. I thought I heard something when they were talking about housing was okay.
Yeah, the province brought in like new planning legislation to ACCs, so that kind of the formalized amenity contributions. And it sounds like now maybe, I'm guessing that there may be some kind of conversation about ACCs versus DCCs. It's always existed. DCCs were brought in as a way to help communities fund future infrastructure, and we weren't allowed to do amenities, or amenities were in a gray area. But the landscape's changed a little bit with that new legislation. I think everything's a little bit up in the air.
Okay.
Just a quick comment to follow up, just as we go through, for my benefit, is $170,000, that's the budget, starts in 2025, 2028. How is that apportioned for Mr. Leview's original snapshot of taxation? Is that, is that over 4 years at 170,000, or is it all up front? I'm just saying that because at the end, I assume council's gonna say, look, we want to see some reductions, staff want to see some reductions. You want us to pitch in and say, well, here's our top 5. How much of this would be 2025?
So I'm going to go off memory here. It is over 4 years, so that would be, basically divided by 4, and each DC bylaw change is about $40,000. So basically that's what we budgeted to do a DCC for water, a DCC for sewer.
Okay.
Which is what you get to about 160. The $10,000 actually there, I believe off the top of my head, is either to do with the housing DCC bylaw or it's to do with the fact that we've almost completed the water DCC. What I'm also noting too as we go through this process, that $40,000 may be a little bit too conservative. That a DCC bylaw, if we've already done this sewer mapping, if we've already done the master plans, it may be more like $15,000 per, not 40 per. So that's the kind of what I'm trying to dig into for this next version of the budget, is to understand exactly what I should be budgeting. So you may see that come down just because we think we can budget a little bit tighter. because we're taking care of it in another project.
Super, thank you.
One more thing, I would sort of like to know how the housing capacity grant is being apportioned out into which projects, like an overview of that. I would have liked to see it cover off more of this update actually, and less on the taxation side. But without knowing what else it's paying for, it's hard to know.
I believe the housing capacity, which is a half grant, I think it's funding the housing DCC fund off portion.
It's the Housing Accelerator Fund. or
Yeah.
HACS, they call it.
So it's directly related to housing, and it was part of the half grant application was to fund that DCC. I don't believe the half application could apply to the other DCC categories. So I believe that one is, that 24,000 represents about $40,000, which is kind of where I was going back to.
Okay.
And that was gonna be for the housing DCC.
All right.
Gonna add one more comment on funding if council doesn't mind. So just want to emphasize that only 46% of this project is funded by taxation, and that's not coming in until year 2026. So in 2026, there's anticipated $40,000, and then 2028 it's another 40,000. So that won't necessarily help us balance budget for 2025, but yeah.
Good information. That's where I want. That's great. Thanks. Okay, that helps.
The discussion. Anchor Park improvements. This is a new project. It has a budget of about $26,000. It would be funded from the CNI levy. This project is intended to sort of improve the area around the totem, install some safety and upgrade our safety there. So our fence is getting pretty old. And what we'd be working with the APOS team with RMI to do some communications and visitor facing improvements. This project is now under discussion because of this library discussion we're having and how the connection between those two might work, what the streetscape looks like, how the nation is involved with the library project. So this project may get pushed out a year to line up with that project, or it may change slightly. So I just want to say it's there. It's something where we need to address at some point, but it may push out a year, or it may change a little bit depending on what kind of connection we're looking for there. Does everybody know where Anchor Park is?
Maybe a name change.
Include a name. Every park is an anchor in town.
Continuing on with our operating projects. The sanitary sewer master plan, we're looking forward to getting underway. This would, something similar to what we did with the water master plan. We have two other sort of associated projects that may get folded into this project, which are existing, which is a sanitary sewer model. So we have a water modeling system that tells us how our water system works. We want to build the same thing for sanitary sewer. We have most of the information, so we think that's going to be fairly easy to do. And then we also have an ongoing I&I project, so inflow and infiltration project, which seeks to find out where stormwater is slipping into our system. So, for example, we know up 4th Street, we have a number of breaks that's basically flooding our Main Street lift station, stormwater during big events. Even though we have a brand new big station, we've experienced issues with it on the last rainfall because of I&I. So anyways, that's just to say that we are working on that, and what we look to do now is to build out a master plan, and then from that master plan, it'll influence the DCC bylaw, the asset management planning, and a potential CNI levy adjustment to address the issues that we're gonna be looking at. Again, going back to my initial point, this is a plan review first. We need to sort of get stuff set out so that we can make the right decisions on our infrastructure into the future. Any questions? Council can expect to see here to come a similar type plan for roads, for probably storm next, and parks. So that's it for our operating projects. Our capital projects. starting with something nice and easy and something council has seen before. This is phase 3 of our streetlight replacement, so we've gone through community and identified where all of the streetlights that we own are replacing and improving, repairing those and installing LED lights. We completed fight for lone cone in Alberta, except for one picture. And then phase 3 would be next year, and then we'll be looking forward to Gibson Street, Neilton, 4031, Black Bear. Once that's done, we would have changed over all of our lights that we own into LEDs. And at the same time, as we get this process, all these items are GIS, we installed in our maintenance manager, and we'll have an ongoing maintenance and repair program for streetlights, like we do for like we should have for everything. In the past, it's just a reflection about what we're using AM for. So we're using asset management decisions every day right now in public works, and as we do that, to sort of formalize processes. We didn't really have an accurate idea of where our streetlights were, how many there were, what shape they were in, when they were installed. And so through the process of installing LED streetlights, we've gone back and we have all that information, and now it's in the maintenance manager program, and it will be part of our maintenance schedule for our crews to look at. So walking around the community in the last 5 years, I noticed streetlights that had like pieces missing, inspection ports off, and wires hanging out, and rust happening, and things burnt out. You can see that on Gibson Street every night. And if we're trying to get to a point where that's just part of our daily work, so we're not just having a developer install a streetlight for a subdivision and then walking away and we come back in 30 years. We're also going to, where we can, and once the policy is in place, consider dark sky opportunities that we may have with streetlights. There's a bit of a balance between safety, traffic, and what we can and can't shield. But we definitely, it's part of our conversation daily about how we can, support some of the dark sky initiatives that we're starting to talk about. Any questions on LED streetlight replacements?
Councillor Snow.
Thank you. So I have a question or maybe a comment for clarity. Understanding that the district understands some of the streetlights that were replaced by developers or by BC Hydro. And they were very bright and they were a lot taller and they shone at angles that streetlights have never shone before. And so are we working with an understanding of trying to prevent that sort of drastic change as we're replacing with LEDs, which tend to be stronger and brighter?
It's a great question. Great question. There's also the BC Hydro stuff, which is BC Hydro, that we don't really have a lot of say in, other than we got to choose what color of LED we chose, and we chose what was hoped to least offensive. We took a warmer light rather than a cooler light. We had 3 choices, or 2 choices at the time. And we talked to BC Hydro over the years, nothing right now, I don't believe, about opportunities for us to, or for them to install shielding, or at least have that opportunity. And it seems like hasn't really gone anywhere. They don't seem to be super receptive to that. So maybe I can just put a pin in that discussion and say BC Hydro is BC Hydro for now. In terms of our own lights, we're not changing like the location or the height or anything like that. We're just changing out the fixtures themselves. We installed a couple of new poles where the new poles were, at end of life. Our teams have started thinking about ways that we can shield it within the regulations that we're beholden to. And so some of my conversations with our asset management staff has been actually how we can fabricate our own shielding, because we can't seem to find something that's going to work off the shelf for that. So I'll take the comment. I'll circle back with the team. It may be that we're to address some of the dark sky issues, we're going to have to go back and build our own shrouds and then install those on that, which is again possible, but maybe costly. And we have to do that within the lane of traffic safety and light of intersection. So I will take that note and I'll get back.
Thank you, and just to follow up, yeah, I wasn't suggesting that we were going to be dealing with the BC hydrolights. I was simply saying maybe we could learn from the aftermath of when those were replaced. And it sounds like you guys are, I'm just hoping that we can avoid putting streetlights up and then doing a dark skies policy and then having to spend more money to replace or change them afterwards.
Yeah, great question. A bit of it's timing, we've been in this process of replacing for as long as, about 5 years, and so I don't have a solution and I don't actually have a policy in place of it. Exactly what it can be. We have a policy that's quite general and more focused on the private side. We're not lighting engineers or traffic engineers, and so I had this discussion with her, what we know we're gonna get calls, what are we gonna do? What can we buy off the catalog that we have for lighting that will address some of these issues? It sounds like there's not a lot of opportunities, and so this team went to what can we fabricate, what can we install? And so I'm gonna circle back with them to try to get a better answer than I just never did.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm gonna weigh in on this. The lone cone lights did get replaced. And I know that council had mentioned quite a few times the desire for BC Hydro to be warm and less bright, et cetera. And I've heard significant feedback from people around me about the lighting. It is far brighter, far more intrusive than it was before. And it certainly is distressing to people. So my comment is that it seems to go opposite of our dark sky policy intent. So my concern is that we're continuing to replace streetlights that are brighter, more intrusive, at the same time as we're talking about dark sky policy. So in this case, I mean, I know it's not taxation, it comes at a reserve, but wouldn't it be smarter to do the dark sky policy first and then replace the streetlights to match, as opposed to, as Councillor Sawyer said, replace them all and then go and have to, redo them or manufacture shrouds and deal with people, on the go, which seems like it's hard on us, hard on the budget, but it's also hard to manage.
Yeah, it's a difficult conversation. So LED streetlights didn't come from staff originally, but it would be a council decision. And I think it was to do with energy saving and just all of that. So we went into these two sort of, approaches to, we want to save on our electricity bills, or we don't want to use as much greenhouse gas, or whatever the conversation is. And now dark sky. Probably there's a place we can meet. And to your point, it would make sense to have that policy in place at the time. If that's where council is looking for, then I would like to go back to my team and just look about what our risks and liabilities are, what our opportunities are not to put an LED, what's the difference in electricity values. But I want to make sure that if we're not installing it to the current standard, we're not looking at something else. I don't really know where to go with this, other than this is a project that's been in place for 3 years. We've just been following those projects. But if it's time to pause it for these locations here, then that's something we can think about doing.
And maybe just to clarify, I remember when this LED streetlight discussion, and I believe it did come from the previous manager of infrastructure, and council did agree with conditions about the brightness and color. That was part of it. So in that mix was also that discussion. So just that was my memory. So anyway, to add a little bit to that.
I appreciate the conversation and I appreciate the comments. I'm not sure what to do. I'm gonna go talk to my team and look through what we may be opportunities are, what makes some of the risks of not doing anything. If there are any, there might be none, what potential energy savings, if there are, what that might look like. And maybe try to get back to council on the next meeting with a little bit more information about what our opportunities might be to pause this project. We may still have to do replacements in terms of, like, say, for example, the ones that give the street are barely on, they're flickering all the time. So, if we maintain whatever is in there now, which is probably a halogen light, or sodium light, what would that look like?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm completely in favor of asset management and replace it with more efficient, longer lasting, less, operational costs. It's just simply the brightness and intrusivity of the new lights.
I mean, I appreciate the conversation that's, I have a light outside my house that shines on, but I understand I understand the issues, I just don't know. Like, in terms of municipality, how we address that, and it feels like to me, we have to find a sweet spot between safety, standards, dark sky, energy efficiency, and try to find somewhere that works, understanding that it's not gonna be perfect no matter what it is, and that's the stuff it's hard for me to do on my feet right now.
Yeah.
But I can definitely talk to the team and try to answer some of this for the next,
And I just also want to be clear, I am reining this back into the financial plan and. But since it's here. All right. No further comments from council, questions? Moving on.
Just gonna try to get this note, yeah. And each realize. Also in stormwater main, this project has been in front of council numerous times. It is still in the budget. We're hoping to undertake it next year. The project budget will probably be readjusted, likely up, by the time it gets to council at the second or third budget meeting. What we're trying to do is align this with the development of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation building, which is construction is imminent. We're starting to get calls from their contractors about when this might happen. And so this would be likely our one big project next year, or our one big capital project would be also stormwater main. Again, for those of you unfamiliar with this, or those of you listening out in the ether, this project would move. Right now we have under Campbell Street down to Olson, there's a culvert that dumps water into the backyard of some private properties. This would be to move that stormwater to Olson Road itself, and then exit out at the ocean. Currently, the district has a right of way on the back of 2 or 3 of the properties at the bottom of Olson Road for an old storm system. Again, that's on private property. We've never maintained it. I'm not sure exactly what's in the ground. We started this project 10 years ago when we were doing a water main and a stormwater main at the same time. We ran a significant archaeological site at that time, and for cost, we had to just reduce it to a water main project rather than water and storm. So this one has been on the books since that time. I don't take any questions, but deals on something.
Is the archaeological work that was done for the water project going to cover off those needs in this project?
In the sense of, do we know what's there, or?
Well, yeah, we did, archaeological, whatever, it added expense, I remember, to that project significantly. And I think the hope was at the time that it was going to be the archaeological work for both projects. And I'm hoping we don't have to do it again. So that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question. There will definitely be archaeological costs to this site. We have to have, again, a new permit. So our previous permit has expired, so we have to get a new permit. So we'll be working with Art Branch. We do know what's in the ground. We know where everything is. And that's a lot of that, concern. It will still mean that we need to have an archaeologist site and likely to look at First Nation representatives as well. There were remains found in the last time and had to be, reinterred somewhere else. So it's a pretty significant site. So there are some costs, but at least now these are known unknowns versus unknown unknowns. We're pretty sure we know what's going on. And I believe there has been some design considerations to allow us to locate that storm closer, in the same trench or close to the same trench, so we don't have to over excavate again.
Good, thanks.
Through the chair, I'm just a little bit confused. So this will not use the old system that is on some private properties. It'll detour all around.
Yeah, so
like
what's
on the highway.
what's currently happening as the culvert comes down across Campbell Street or into Campbell Street, it dumps down into what is now the Clapper Biosphere Trust lot. We don't have any agreements on that lot, which then goes into the lot below it. We don't have anything on that lot, and then it's I think a third lot, but we don't have an agreement on that. There isn't, and then for the bottom 2 or 3 lots, there is an agreement from the 70s that said the district has a storm right away for those bottom 3 properties. So obviously what I think would happen is at one point there was one big lot that was a storm system we put in place. That's an old stream, Wilson. And so we've never looked at it, we haven't maintained it, we don't exactly know what's in the ground there. And if we were to redevelop that property, we would never put storm, or generally never put storm. You could not put storm on a property, and so we're just trying to move that there. But almost the bigger issue is this front 3 lots, which are getting a significant amount of water there. We're gonna have a very large new building there, a very prominent building, and so it's the time seems to be right to address this one. Again, this is being more on staff than a council issue that we haven't completed up to this time. We again juggling lots of projects, and the cost of this one is it seems large for the number of houses that it's going to service. Like we're going to basically develop this, prepare the storm for 6 or 8 houses. But it's just what we have to do is, as the storms get worse or more tense, and we don't have a storm plan, we just need to address these. This one's important because it's at the end of it's at the end of a stormwater system, right before it hits the ocean. So this in the future may collect more stormwater from further up the hill as well. So if you were going to build a stormwater system, you'd want to do it from the bottom up. That's where everything collects at the end. So I feel like this project is probably ready for completion.
If I may, I just have a comment for Aaron. Aaron, before you get into additions and fleet replacements, can you maybe just update council on why we can continue to take this on in-house rather than enter into the contract that
The fleet. Our asset management program is constantly evolving. Are the people, the District of Tofino employees to manage the system are really careful about spending taxpayer dollars. And we originally thought that it would be cost effective to work with a fleet management company, we didn't have that housing. But upon review and as being involved, we think that this is the process that staff can undertake, especially since we instituting the PSD citywide software and primarily maintenance manager. So that is why we're taking this in-house. Council will see, I think this month or early next month, our first draft plan. And so in the end, we only have 20 or 25 vehicles. It's not a lot to manage. So that's why we're currently managing it. That council will be able to see the fleet plan and have a conversation at that point. Question we vote.
The fleet additions, 65,000, this is.
So this can now talk about fleet additions. So that was just the overall.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The other program we were looking for last couple of years and working with a contractor to manage our fleet for us, basically. We've reviewed that and think that we can do it in a more cost-effective manner through an asset management planning and asset management team. Just looking to save money. So next year we have an addition to our fleet. So that means there's an addition that comes out of taxation. This project is a new truck. So it'll be a full-size truck. And it's required due to the number of washrooms and facilities for cleaning. So this will be for the facilities maintenance worker District of Tofino. Currently, we are deficient in trucks on certain days. It's difficult for us to undertake our work in an efficient manner. So, this one is directly related to the idea of resourcing and the municipal hall, the garbages, increasing that we're seeing in uses of our washrooms from visitors. It's basically, as we add assets, we have to address those assets, and the question being at some point, I mean, again, this is what we need, at some point being, what is the level of service that we're willing to offer to the community and to visitors as they come here. We don't have a truck, then maybe we're looking at reducing the level of service. So if you're only doing certain runs at certain days, or reducing the amount of runs we're doing in the day, or we're okay with certain other outcomes. So this one is directly related to business cases, which we're going to discuss later today as well.
So we just a clarification, we can just, you're showing us this now, this proposal, and as we get into the business cases, we can chat about it later.
Yeah, if what I'm saying from an operational perspective, I need this truck, the district need this truck. If council decides, again, we're looking to bring that, to balance the budget, and we're looking at things removed. If it's removed, it will impact my level of service, and that's something else we'll have to discuss at that time. If we want to maintain our current level of service, this is what I need.
And just another question about,
I just had a question whether this would, if the ask is for an outright purchase of a new vehicle, or would this be through a leasing program?
Likely outright purchase.
yeah.
Thank you. A couple comments on this one. This goes back to what the CFO was mentioning earlier in the financial officer's report regarding aligning life cycle costs with projects that come before council. So if council recalls, in the previous financial plan, a couple of washrooms were approved and one has been built, the second one's almost completed. And in doing so, a corresponding vehicle is required to match that level of service in increasing the facilities. It's sort of an example, a very clear example I can provide as to why it's so important for us to come forward to council when council's making decisions on adding a new facility or upgrading a facility, like the pickleball courts is another example. What does that mean in terms of resources required to service that new facility or the new asset or the improved asset? So that's what we're going to work towards in the 2026 financial plan. Unfortunately, this requirement to add this fleet vehicle is coming after the approval of particular facilities, which has already increased our service level. And so this is needed to service decisions that council has made in the past. They're not an ideal situation to be in, and not where we want to continue. And not how we want to continue to make decisions. And so that's why the asset management team and the financial services team are going to be better connected moving forward and put more information in front of council when they're making decisions.
Sure. And maybe just a comment, since we got all day. I do recall reading through the through the council package that there was a Toyota truck that was going to be replaced. Is that right? And the sale was.
Next slide.
Oh, the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the addition, the other one's gonna be replacement.
So my question was, if we're getting rid of a Toyota truck for 15 grand, and expect to pull back 15, why can't we just, move it over, and instead of buying a brand new truck, just use the Toyota for another 5 years? So it would be my question, but anyway.
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is what our
I have an answer to that.
Okay.
So when council approved the potential contract we were going to enter into for someone to manage our fleet, we talked a lot about the risk of keeping an older vehicle within the fleet and the cost to the municipality versus replacement of that vehicle. And through that discussion, we realized that there are disadvantages for retaining a fleet for longer than 8 years, I'll say, as an example. So there comes a time where you need to make a replacement decision so that you are actually saving the municipality funding. So those decisions are made by the asset management team. we are able to sell a vehicle and use that as part of their replacement cost, which you'll see on the next slide. But sometimes it is more costly to keep a fleet vehicle when it goes past a certain age.
Can I just add on that 1 second? Sure. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say too, it's what council hasn't had the benefit of seeing it is the draft fleet asset management plan, which looks out over 10 or 20 years to determine, you know, how we're gonna, when it's time to get rid of our vehicle. So like it's an age-based, kilometer-based, condition-based. And needs change, right? So like, for example, in Toyota, we're talking about, we're not getting rid of it, we're just replacing it for a bigger vehicle because it's used for something that is used for garbages versus, you know, utility working. So I just wanted to say that I really, I don't know if we're gonna be in front of council with the AMP plan before the next budget. We will be, so like, we get to this next budget meeting, we'll have had the benefit of looking, council will have had the benefit of looking at this asset management plan and getting a little bit deeper understanding of why we're making these decisions. And so fleet for me is very interesting because for us, you know, we're working off that draft AM plan already for fleet. And it's informing how it's informing the recommendations we're coming forward to the council in these project sheets. And so I'm excited for council to be able to share that information and understand why we're making decisions. A fleet, like an asset management plan would generally tell you what you're gonna need and what's gonna specifically, like when you get to that time and be able to plan to replace, needs may have changed, you may need to replace with something slightly different, or maybe you can do that same thing. So there'll still be conversations with council about that, but it's gonna give us all a bit of a framework to have this conversation. Councilor, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask now so I can really understand before we continue the conversation. So I'm wondering if my last memory is incorrect, but I do believe we were discussing the fleet management company that we would be working with. And so that would involve someone who would be maintaining vehicles, or we would send them out when they were getting older and these would be getting replaced. So is that just not what we're looking towards at all now, or am I misunderstanding the situation?
Yeah, I think I can clarify. So we would have been outsourcing this work to manage fleet. So organizing when it was going out of town, we stopped driving out of town. We got to pick which dealers we're using. Is these programs are harder when you're in a rural or community. The group that we were looking at would provide us with a replacement schedule, which, you know, I've seen drafts of, which is very similar to what we're using, saying you're going to need to replace 3 cars in 26, 2 in 28, 5 here, 0 here, and they provide that. We're going to do the same stuff ourselves, but we're just going to do it in-house, not paying a fee to have someone else tell us when it's done. We're going to do it based on our asset. So it's going to look to council like the same thing, I guess. I'm sorry, I lost what's up there.
No, that makes sense. I just really wanted to understand what had changed with our decision to not go with the service anymore. So that answers it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Harder than we thought. The fleet replacement. So this is obviously quite a large project budget. We're replacing a significant amount of vehicles that have come to end of life per the draft AMP plan, which council did see. Most of the funding here is going to come from the CNI levy. So over the last number of years, we've been allocated for that CNI levy. So because it's replacement, we can use those funds. Plus, we're going to be selling what we can, and that will form our funding source. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here, just because 511,000 seems like a pretty large random number. This project again is actually over. It says 2025 there, but it's actually over 2 years. It's going to be 25, 26, and 25. We're looking at about 466,000, I think, is what we're looking at. It's going to be age-based. The replacement of these vehicles is what we're using in our asset management plan. And again, it's the idea, as Ms. Atiana said, maximize capital investments. So in 2025, we're going to replace 2 vehicles with 1 vehicle called a multi-hog. I just want to say multi-hog one more time. The multi-hog is gonna be used primarily to begin with for doing the work that we do in the month, to clean the ditches out, to maintain and do that. That vehicle can then be used for other things, but we're not planning on it right away. We're gonna get it either for what the kind of purpose we have, but there are options to add different attachments as we go, but we're not gonna go down that road yet. The lifespan is expected to be about 15 years. As we, this is going back to this level of service and these life cycle costing, as we improve the multi-use path, add 4 meters, new sections, we have to maintain it as well. And so things just get more expensive, so that when we get ROI projects in the future, we're gonna be looking at life cycle costing, understanding, okay, we made this much better, but what does that mean in terms of operation? Do I need a different vehicle? Do I need more people? Is it more area that needs to be swept or trimmed? This purchase will be through new procurement, so the vendors we're looking at for the different vehicles are all working with community procurement, so that procurement stuff is completed, so we have a fair price on the vehicle. So I'm able to stop there, because multi-hog is a big vehicle. It's replacing what we're currently using, which is what we call a flail mower, but it's the John Deere mower with the attachment. So currently our staff drive down the multi-use path like this. It's unsafe. I've had a number of OH&S concerns from there and people off with injury. Because this vehicle, we think again will replace that function of 2 vehicles, but also allow us to potentially add more functions. And I say this because this vehicle is significantly more expensive than just replacing the existing flail mower. I'm gonna stop there.
Councillor Thomas.
I guess through the chair, my question would be, is this, I get that it fulfills the needs of multiple things, but is this something that in 5 years, we'll be coming back and being told we need a second one of these? Because even though it can serve multiple purposes, it can only be in one position at a time.
It's a great question. It's the same question I asked our team. Is this the right vehicle for the right time and for how long? And so from the conversations I've had with our staff, thinking about it, I think it feels like it's the right decision. The question that you just asked is kind of the basis of our AIM program now. It's like, is this the new shiny toy on the block? Is this the coolest one? Or is this something we actually need, and have we done the work to determine that? And knowing that we have this draft asset management plan for fleet in place, and then knowing that we're using that, I feel confident that this is the right vehicle for its intended purposes. In speaking of staff, they're expecting this to last its full 50 years of lifespan. The existing flail mower that we have is at year 12 and requires a whole new front end. So the question, this is one of the questions we talked about yesterday, is like, could you replace that flail mower with another flail mower? What idea? It's less expensive than the multi-hog. Could you repair the existing flail, get 3 more years out of it, but still have to dispose of it in 3 years? Again, another option. And it's these conversations and then looking out at life cycle costs, which is leading us to these decisions on whether to replace or not.
I can add a little bit more to this discussion, and just want council to know that these project sheets don't come to you before they hit my desk, particularly something like this. So Mr. Rogers and I have spoken at length in terms of why this is needed. I remember when the flail mower was in front of council, and there was a lot of scrutiny at that time, and that was I think it was $15,000 at the time. So this does require some discussion, and we have to keep in mind that you are going to receive a fleet plan, an asset management plan, before council makes any decisions on this. So the purpose of this first draft of the financial plan is to just get all of the sort of equipment needs that we see are necessary in front of council. You will have a lot more time to have these discussions. We know this is a fairly big piece of equipment that we'd like to add to the fleet. Further to that, there was a comment made, I believe, from Councillor Sawyer earlier about whether a piece of equipment would be financed or if it would come from taxation. Those decisions are made as we try to balance the financial plan. Sometimes it's more beneficial for us to finance over a 5-year term, and we're able to draw down that pressure on taxation in 1 year and spread it over 5 years. Those discussions don't happen until we get further into balancing the financial plan. So the funding sources may change between second and first draft, and the projects and the fleet may change before it gets in front of council, and you will have a lot more time to discuss this.
I think I think this is a great conversation. I'm really excited to have it because, you know, just having this asset management discussion is just something we haven't done in the past. Like, maybe we have, but we haven't had the information to be able to have a fruitful discussion. The other side of this, you know, of replacing the flail, which needs to be replaced, is just reducing level of service, right? This is on the table. Right now, we mow them up. The ditches in the multi-use path. It's not our property, it's actually highways, and they're actually responsible for it. But they don't do a very good job of it, and it's hard to get them to do work. So we do that as a municipality, right? So that incurs costs to our staff. If we decided that we didn't want to do that anymore, if we were okay with alders growing up in there in the ditches and, you know, dealing with storm, because, you know, as alders grow and culverts get blocked, you run into storm issues. We could just not do this. But there's other things that would happen then. So there would be root growth underneath them up. So the brand new multi-use paths that we're putting in for significant dollars would start to heave. We'd have to think about replacing there. So I just wanted to say that I want the conversation I think we're gonna be having over the next couple of years is talking about not just replacing, but the level of service that we want to provide or we're willing to provide. And this one is a funny one because you could just stop tomorrow, right? You could not spend whatever multi-cog costs about $250,000. We can just stop mowing that. We can mow it less. All of those have implications. If we're dealing with, say, other issues would be traffic safety. So which is growing up on driveways and not being able to see as you turn out. If we don't have a vehicle, do I hire more people that we want to make at weed whackers? You know, I went out every 3 years with an arborist and chopping down trees there. These are all options that we can talk about. But to maintain existing level of service, this is what we need. I just want to make sure that level of service is also part of this discussion. Always we're talking about adding or replacing.
It's good comment, good segue, because I do have a comment. I was going to bring this up, but I will bring it up. I noticed that the farther the mup gets out of town, the less the alders are cut down, etc. And you know, there's some issues there. If we have this piece of equipment, a significant purchase, not only will we be able to maintain the service that we see, the flail motor going back and forth, is it a significant upgrade enough that we will see some increase in that service because of the ability of the machine and the people?
Great question. I don't know the exact answer to that. It's likely that it will, in the sense that it's newer. It seems to work like so. Again, I'm getting the weeds here, but you're sitting forward and you're moving an arm that you can see. So likely you can go a little bit faster because you're not doing that. The flail mower is currently broken down. It's broken down all year. We actually trimmed the path with multi-hog and another piece of equipment that we were testing out to see how well they worked. And the report back from the staff, so people who are actually operating, is that it was a great piece of equipment that made their job easier. So I believe that it likely will translate into some further efficiencies. If we want to get out there more often, then that's again just a conversation about do we have the staff, the opportunity and the equipment. This year has been a really bad year because we just haven't gotten into there. We have some people out there like with weed whackers and stuff the best as we can. But parks generally takes care of these. It's been challenging this year with our staffing and the flail breaking down. So it's potentially that we could.
Okay, we have a lot of really expensive assets, and I'd love to see them taken care of as best as we can. So this may be one of the ways. Great, thanks. Anderson, Councillor Anderson.
This is a lot in 1 year. I'm glad to see that you said it's actually over 2 years. Not having the asset management plan finished to the level of detail that we can know what's coming in terms of fleet replacement in the next years after that. And this is all new, it wasn't projected in the 5-year plan last year. So it's a chunk of change. And when we're replacing so many vehicles at once, I'd like to know sort of their lifespan. Because I don't want to replace 10 vehicles that are all going to be 10 vehicles that need to be replaced 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road. So that we're not hitting these, whatever, these booms when everything needs to be replaced at once. So it'd be good if we knew the lifespan of things so that when we're replacing stuff, we can sort of say, well, put that one off so that going forward, they'll be replaced at different times. And until we get the management plan or the asset management plan to the level of detail that we'll know that kind of things, it'd be good just to kind of have an estimation on the lifespan of these things to sort of think about it a little bit more, that we might put one off a year or two.
It's a great comment, I have so much to say. That level of detail exists and will be presented to council. We know what all our vehicles are, and we have a projected schedule of replacement. You're gonna see as is, because we didn't really have a plan in place before, so you may see years where you have to replace 5. I think 26 we're replacing 1 vehicle. So it's gonna be about depending on that. And not only that, is that even though something may be up for renewal, we may look at that vehicle in that year or the year where it's actually doing great. It's in great shape. We're gonna follow that and do that in 11 years. So they get flexibility within the AM plan as well to deal with that. The other thing I would say is that, again, because this is funded, this portion itself is funded from C&I levy, that fund is constantly being replenished every year, and it will be based on the management plan. So even if there is a big year 10 years from now, because we've adjusted the C&I levy to address that, it won't matter in large part because that's what the plan was planning for. It means that obviously better to even it out, but not strictly necessary if your C&I levy is matching up with your AM plan. And again, once we get to the AM planning process, the whole C&I levy conversation about what is the correct, what is the correct number to be collecting to the C&I levy for a specific infrastructure class is going to be a big conversation for council to make sure that that we're maintaining, the C&I levies to do the stuff that we say we're supposed to do.
Yeah, just one comment, I don't think we've ever had that kind of planning around equipment, except, at one time, replacing the fire truck was a huge expense and we had a reserve specifically just for that one piece of equipment. And now we need it for a whole bunch of things. And so that the C&I levy, again, kudos to the inventor of the C&I levy because it does ease that tax burden over a number of years.
It's quite healthy too we have spent a lot of money on fleet the years, the years that we don't, we're still collecting. And so anyways, I can't wait for Mr. Kriba, Mr. Kirkland to present that. I think it'd be great.
Okay, can we let's have a little 5-minute break, is that all right?
Yeah, I'm still on this slide, but I'm happy to pause it because I talk about a lot, but I do have more vehicles to talk about. Yeah.
Sorry, say it again? You want to keep going
Do you
and
want to
then?
finish the slide first? Or you want to
Sorry, I thought we were gonna finish this slide. I didn't see more hands up. Go ahead and finish the
Although there's
slide.
5 more vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear, that
I have
$511,000
questions.
isn't what a multi-hog costs. A multi-hog costs about $250,000. It's still a big piece of equipment and still more expensive than layout, not $511,000.
Well, actually, can I call a recess? I think, because if I don't call a recess, I'm not gonna be able to think.
The other vehicles being added in 25, what we replaced in 25, we'll be replacing one of our existing Toyotas with a full-size truck, replacing our Dodge 500, which is our grain truck, and nearing the end of life, the equivalent type of vehicle replacing a flat deck and a compressor trailer separately as well with something equivalent. Those are lower priced items in the project sheet itself. And then 26, replacing our Prius with an equivalent hybrid vehicle. And again, we'll see the fleet management plan, but it's basically based on what on age and what we think it's going to cost us in the future and what the value of that vehicle is today to try to maximize our investment.
Councillor Thomas.
With the Toyota Tacoma, I was wondering, how old is it? When is it from?
Ooh, good question. I don't have that detail, and I think it's a 2016. And the reason we're replacing with larger is basically we have larger people, but also I believe the truck that we're replacing is going to service the facility maintenance worker team, and so they just need something bigger for garbages and such. We purchased 3 Tacomas prior to my time here across the board, and those are not necessarily fit for purpose for what we're currently doing. We actually just purchased a new Tacoma for the utilities team through the wastewater treatment plant project. So that's living over at wastewater treatment plant now. But the Toyota that we're looking at replacing is even our FMW or our labor group tend to carry more equipment.
I guess where I was going with that was just to Mayor Law's feedback on the previous one about if we were replacing a truck, maybe we could use that truck instead of buying new. And then I guess we'll just get into it when we see the asset management plan, because if we're just replacing stuff based on age and maybe not some of the other components, then I question how that kind of falls in some of our environmental concerns. If we're just consistently, oh, this is X years old, we're just going to buy shiny and new, as opposed to maybe using what we have in some other capacities. Maybe this doesn't suit this need, but it could suit another need within the district.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and I guess this will come down to council looking at the asset management plan, but
Yeah.
if it is indeed in 2016, which I think it might be, and we're at 2024, next year we can 9, so that's 9 years old. And our intent isn't our intent based on what we're currently doing is to replace them at that age, because that's when they're worth the most amount of money for the district, that we can get money back to reinvest that money in another deal. That's the intent of this plan. So it's not necessarily looking at environmental concerns, which can be added into like an asset management plan, and that's more like a decision that we're establishing. What we're trying to do is maximize our capital investment. So we spend a lot of money in vehicles. We want to get as much money as we can out before they get to a point of time where they're so deteriorated, we have to basically, that's the result of this. It's the same thing that would have happened if we worked with a contractor. They're replacing for 5 years. I would also like to say that we don't necessarily buy new. So the recent Tacoma we bought, the utilities team, I think was I want to say it's 22 maybe, or 2019. And we're always looking for deals as well, and so we're not always purchasing. And what the last thing I'll say is that what might happen is we might get to next year with our 25 and look at that truck and say, we only used it 2,000 K this last year because of, it was needed repair or something happened. Let's just see if we can push that one more year. We don't think the condition's going to get any worse, or it's going to be the same. And so again, I just want to even though we're presenting this, there is flexibility built into that thinking to allow us to do things like it's not time to get rid of that vehicle yet. I think these would be, and again, because we're going to get the plan before we come back to council again, it'll be a great conversation to have about that, about what we want to see in that plan, what are the purposes here, what our asset board to have to say about how we presented this or how we developed the program. I can say that the asset management program that we are developing is based on industry standards. So whether it's a North American standard or is for asset management, that's basically what we're following. And you can determine, replacement on condition, mileage, age, and I think in the end it come down to age and getting them actually capital return when we can.
Thanks, Mr. Roger. I have one further thing for for transparency. How is the value of the used assets calculated, and then how are those assets disposed of? And is it go out to is it a blind lottery, or just how do you do that?
I think I will need our asset for the asset detail, but basically we have a disposition policy. Maybe perhaps now, Ms. Attiana can speak to how we dispose of assets, but it's through an open and transparent process, and it's based on the value of that. So I'm not sure if we got flat book or if we have it appraised, but we will put it to market at market value, and that's kind of how we plan to do it. I don't know.
I can speak to that. That's in council's purchasing and disposition of assets policy. So the standard right now is if the asset is over, I want to say $1,000, but thank you. I wrote it, I should know. Then we have to go out and publicly offer the asset, but in the case of fleet vehicles, if we can work with the dealership to get a favorable cost, sometimes with the trade-in, they'll reduce some of the cost of what you're purchasing. That's more advantageous for us, so we make the most advantageous decision. But if we're just disposing of an asset, no replacement or anything like that, we have to just look for the fair market value, and then we post it out for bids, and then we dispose of it that way. If it's under a certain value, we have more flexibility, which is why sometimes you'll see that we do a surplus sale for donations and that kind of thing, and it's lower valued items that we're trying to dispose of.
And maybe one more question, since it comes up repeatedly, and I know it always gets put, but electrification of the fleet. I know that's been tossed around, and and the cost of fuel versus electric versus capital costs. Is that entered into discussion in the asset management plan? Because I don't see, I see the hybrid, but the truck potential have expensive truck that doesn't cost anything to run.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us, it's still a little bit new. And it's not new in the world, but electrifying our site to do that. I don't think we spend a lot of time on it. I think I would refer that question to our council plan. Yeah.
Okay.
And then through the chair, just to follow up on that, I do think electrifying is a good idea going forward, because from what I've heard, the maintenance of it is quite significantly less.
Yeah, I think it's having some for us to explore, obviously maintenance fuel, if I had to guess, I'm gonna say that we're gonna be a little bit conservative in that adoption, see how we go. The question of whether we get full cycle vehicles or not, the availability is a cost, what's the right cost of those as well, are tend to be significantly more expensive than what we're currently using. I'm just saying, I don't know if people don't mind or not, I'm just saying it out loud, so we consider. But on balance, of course, we should be.
And that is something that when Mr. Preview comes up, we can say, hey, this is something, and in that, at that time, now here's a good question for you, if we're talking, because it's come up repeatedly. If council says, hey, you know what, we really want the infrastructure to prioritize electrification of their fleet. Is that something that is possible in this process, or?
100%. So council can obviously, this is going to be your plan, and comment on what you want to see is fine. What staff would do then is say, what are the implications of that? So if we're gonna try, what's the capital cost for installing the chargers at the yard that we're gonna need for the haul trucks or whatever we have? What are the costs of purchasing, and how does that affect the C&I levy? Because again, we have to purchase or lease these vehicles, and they're expensive, and so how does that impact that long-term 20-year plan? Is it something that we want to bring on in pieces, as we can do it versus all at once? And so I think it's a conversation we should have. My guess is where we're going to end up is in a life kind of cost cycle analysis of two types of vehicles, right? So let's just say a standard Ford F-150 and an electric F-150 equal. Let's say they're both long boxes and they both are crew cabs. One costs $120,000, one costs $60,000, and we know we spend X amount on fuel and maintenance each year. We know we're not going to spend it or spend minimal on this over the 10 years or the 8 years, whatever we decide to own it. What does that look like at the end? And that's in the end, and that's just the decision that we'll make. Is our asset management plan there to be most efficient and cost effective? And what's the end result of this step? This one is cheaper than what we should be looking at. Asset management, we're trying to make sure that the money that we spend is the most efficient way possible. It's kind of how we're looking at it. So
great. And there's also, the ethical that council may weigh in and say, this is what our community, where, values, and if it costs, $1,300 more over 8 years, well, we're willing to do that. So just a question, I just put it up to council.
That's a great point, though. It's like, that ethics or that direction is what council staff would be looking for. Like it's in the end, we present, based on a certain thing, and it's council that feel that's neat, but we actually want to, use less greenhouse gases, or we want to do electrification. We just build it into the project. Council says this is what we want.
Great. Councilor Anderson.
I don't feel like the new strategic plan has a strong emphasis on the electrification of the fleet. We have other related things in there around climate change and so on, but I feel like that in the past, councils have given a higher priority to electrification than currently we have in our strategic plan. So that's, again, something that, I could be wrong. I'm gonna look at that and see where it is, but I think one of the things that when we did our strategic plan, I don't recall a lot of talk around electrification. So that's what our staff would be working from, is our strategic plan and other policies. So anyways, that's so if we want to put a higher priority, we might want to look at that more closely, and not necessarily as part of the budget process, but we got to make sure that we're giving direction in our strategic plan that's equivalent to the direction we're following as we go through this kind of decision making.
Yeah, maybe I can make a comment on that, just because it's been sort of a back and forth. Maybe this is for council. Is that as a recent owner of electric vehicles, I did not know how much cheaper they actually are to run, and it's my experience that most people that don't own one don't know how much cheaper they are to run. That the cost of the capital cost is far overshadowed by the actual savings in fuel and maintenance costs. So that's something that I think that most people don't know, but that is emerging. So anyway, that's just a comment. But Councilor Sawyer.
I have a comment based on the lack of direct mention in the strategic plan for electrification of the vehicles. However, I feel like the want is reflected in the fact that we do focus on the environment. We do want to be resilient going forward, and working with being strong in the face of I think we call it climate resiliency. So I do see like hybrid vehicles or electric vehicles as a really good step forward. Obviously, if they're cheaper to run, that's bonus too, even with the upfront cost. I think that now that we've seen more electric vehicles on the roads, we have a better idea of their lifespan, of what the problems are. This isn't a brand new vehicle that we have no idea what's going to happen.
It's a great conversation out here today in terms of how we spend money and how we get enough money for ourselves. Are we looking for deals? We think long, and I also hear thinking about this as well. So I hear all the stuff. I've got notes. I'm going to bring it back to Mr. Kriba and make sure that when we come to council with asset management plan, we can answer some of these and provide some additional information. Maybe some draft like cost analysis about that. So at least we can talk about it.
Super. Yeah, great.
Okay, I think we've talked about what we now we can move on. Very interesting conversation.
Can I make one more comment about the fleet? Okay. I think if we're looking at electrifying vehicles, would there be some consideration in like the event of like a environmental incidents where we lose power and maybe we need our vehicles to run off fuel?
Yeah, and it's a great point. I think that's probably what we may look at is what that might look like, criticality of our resources. Like, should the fire truck be electric or not, or should the crane truck, which we might need, be electric or not? I don't know. And not all vehicles are right now electrified. Like, I don't know that there's a 5,500 flat deck truck out there that does electrify, and so there may be, I think it's something we do have to consider, what you do with it. When the power goes out, off the electric cars, we can charge up probably on generators, not that we had to, but it's definitely a consideration for the plan.
Thank you.
I think the higher risk would be running out of fuel. I think we realize that.
Also an issue.
You can make, if you have gas, you can make electricity. If you have electricity, you can't make gas.
We could get a herd of goats instead of a flail mower.
Yeah.
We could have a horse.
I like to do that.
You know, I like that idea too. It's like a tunnel to get moved from ditch to ditch.
Could have a horse, oxen that eats the alders in the ditch. Two birds with one stone.
Goats.
Yes.
Goats. Okay. Yeah, this is where you pass it over to council. And like, you can
And this
start a
is-
committee.
This is how we're here till.
Who doesn't want to be elected again?
Okay, all right.
So our next slide is Sharp Dam remediation. It's a new project for council. It extended over 2 years, a design year in 25 and a construction year in 26. The intent is basically to get in and do some long overdue maintenance on a dam that we have, or kind of a major dam at Close Creek, which holds 2/3 of our water supply. This is a critical piece of infrastructure, a kind of a no regrets project, no matter which way our water master plan goes, because that dam's been in place since I think the 60s. And there's exposed rebar now, and we haven't paid a lot of attention to it. It would be funded from the CNI levy. It will be a logistically difficult project because we're gonna have to shut down the system on that side probably during the winter time, so we can get that water in the summertime. And then our crews will be working over on Beers Island where there's no power. Access is challenging, bringing equipment over is challenging, safety is challenging. And that is now a protected area as well, so it's gonna be a difficult project, and that's what we're giving third thing in 25. Is that project.
Comments from council? I think it's a pretty
I'm just-
interesting project, obviously.
Would that be a contract going out, or you said our crew would?
Our crews and our contracting crews.
Okay.
Yeah, we would not be, we'll be there for oversight at a certain level, but likely that'll be some specialized that we bring.
Yeah, it would take significant mobilization to get concrete over there, so.
I've seen pictures of them working on it from the 60s, and it was helicopters bringing a lot of that working at place. And it has to probably happen in the hardest time of the year to work, which is in the rainy season, because they have to operate off the south Tofino side of the system.
A consideration on that too is if there's any other project work that would benefit from that mobilization, it might be the time to do it all at once.
It's a great point. We were hoping to maybe have done this later, but knowing we had crews with that kind of experience in town for been on these types of projects. From what I understand, there is some interest in the market for something this size. Really good point.
Just a comment for Ms. Etienne.
Yes.
Switch over or the view is that, a lot of these projects, major projects are CNI levy. And just, when we see taxation up there, I know that council traditionally goes, oh, and gets anxious and see CNI levy, it's kind of this invisible pot that has a ton of money in it. But at some point, because of, for council's benefit and to have, a quick snapshot of where we're at the CNI levy, I think we've reached the optimal investment. But that was for a projection that was X number of years ago. And so I just want to maybe at some point next time or whenever it comes to have that brought up so that we have a reference point of where we are at with the CNI levy. Are these, were these projected in there? They knew, is the CNI levy then going to be recalibrated for an optimal investment going forward, just something like that.
Yeah, so a couple things I think embedded in that comment, and a couple things we need to get back to council with is how relevant is that capital and infrastructure levy now? Based on what we know about our assets. And so it is divided out by category. I'm noticing that this isn't indicating the category of infrastructure levy, but it is coming out of the water. What council will see as we move through the budget process, likely in second draft, you'll probably recall that I've commented on how sustainable our investment program is based on what we're presenting in the financial plan. So I do a 5-year analysis of whether it's sustainable and what those balances look like year after year. And so that will be coming to council in the second draft through the financial officer's report. And we can start talking about, as we bring asset management plans forward, reference the current levy for fleet as an example, and how that relates to what's going to happen in actuality. And so when we start projecting out what the actual replacement costs are, current assets, what we plan on adding in, how we plan on sort of amending service levels over the years, what does that look like in terms of what we're collecting present day? So that will all come forward to council. First step is to get the AM plan in front, and then we'll start talking about that investment level. And we'll do that category by category, with the most, I think, shocking categories being water and wastewater, as we know, and likely roads. So that will be coming sort of step by step. And so for those of you that were on council back when I started talking about asset management and prior to us getting to that, what we referred to at the time in the optimal level of investment, we knew there was a gap of knowledge, and that gap of knowledge is what Aaron's asset management team was working on. From a financial perspective, we know what we know in terms of what we're amortizing in assets, but we don't know what that actual replacement value is and what the gap is in terms of what we capitalize for accounting purposes and what the asset management team looks at in terms of what their asset values are. So we knew there was a gap, and we're working to close that gap, but we're just not quite there yet.
Thank you.
Moose Creek valve chamber replacement, council may be familiar with this project from discussions during our water shortage of the previous summer. This is a project for 2 years. It would be a design and then a build project as well over on Reefs Island. This would replace the existing infrastructure there, so our pipes and our valves are all end of life. They haven't been touched in 30 or 40 years, as well as installing the crossover valve that we installed temporarily during that water shortage. Main Street water service replacement. This project is over, I believe, it's over 3 or 4 years. It'll be a design and then a couple different build years. Again, this is just the constant upgrading that we need to do with the water system that's aging and failing in certain places. Some of these projects are quite large, obviously, and conversation about what currently is in C&I that may be reserved for water is going to be part of this conversation. Some of these projects can be related to whether we can get grants. I think quite soon we're going to run out between the projects that we need to do, ones that we have, and I think we're going to make some tough decisions to prioritize projects going forward. But for now, this will be up here, and at least we're going to design it as a shovel-ready project to take advantage of opportunities that come up. The other thing about this project, we might pause a little bit, is just to again see what's happening with the library and that lot, and any streetscape improvements that we may do there. And so that's one that may get pushed a little bit, just depending on what the timeline is for we have a plan for Main Street, again, not funded, but before you get close to thinking about that, we need to make sure all that underground infrastructure is in place, and we don't have to remove the roads and streetscaping right away.
For that one, what portion of the budget, is it that portion of the budget, that budget allocation all in 2025, or is it spread out over the 4 years?
It's spread out.
Okay, what portion would hit the 2025 budget, or do we know yet?
I've got it here.
Oh, okay,
It's
thanks.
like 100, 400, 572, 831.
Okay, great. Answered, never mind.
Gibson Street design, there's no change to this project. It was projected to do the design of Gibson Street from First to Fourth, basically, and then following that construction year to turn that into a proper road. We don't have a funding source for it currently, and we're currently dealing with some issues on Fourth Street that may have to require this project to be pushed out, so the project may or may not stay on for this next version of the budget. It's obviously a well-used route. People are using that route through the parking lot every day to access that part. I think it's something that needs to happen at some point. But again, funding decisions may require us to do something else in the meantime.
Yeah, just comment on that. I understand that the ST70 is also looking at significant property that borders Gibson Street, so.
Yeah. It's, Hard Mountain Tank, again, a new project. A larger project that we would replace a tank that we currently have in Bars Mountain that's getting near end of life and is not sufficiently protected. This is one that I'm going to go back with our team and spend a little bit more time with. We know from our water master plan that we have a surplus of supply inside, and so whether this is required or is it something that we can push out a little bit further, it's something that I want to build that on. But again, it's just sort of building a story that we have significant infrastructure needs that we're going to have to address over the coming decade. This is just a.
We'll go back to Bars Mountain for a moment, because there are some members of council that probably remember the Bars Mountain project where we added a new reservoir up at Bars Mountain. So we have two sitting up there right now, and this one refers to the one that was sitting there previously. So there was always an intention to keep both of them in place, and they're certainly required.
Yeah, and I believe the original designs had space for this new second tank. You had to build the first one, but there was always a space sign with a different circle, so that this would be removed. I think I want to go back and look at this in light of the water master plan and have a deeper conversation with staff. Again, it's I we can fund all of these, so anyway, unless we just
Yeah, for the using capital and infrastructure, I see grant is up there right now, and we'll go back and we're going to be talking about funding sources. The intention of the infrastructure levy was to try to help us obtain grants. And so, if we do a 10% or 30% and use that to try to leverage grants, that's an ideal scenario. When we were factoring in sort of a level of risk in the infrastructure or in the investment plan, we talked also about potentially borrowing for some of the larger infrastructure projects. So we wouldn't be collecting everything from taxpayers over the years. We would leave debt servicing as an option if we needed to. We would make sure we would go after grants if we could. The water is certainly an area where we reduced that investment level, not by a significant amount, but reduced it because we knew that grants would certainly be an opportunity for this category.
Close Creek Filtration Gallery renewal. This is the project that would involve digging out the current filtration gallery and basically rebuilding it or maintaining it. This is going to allow us potentially access to more water that's coming up the mountain. Something that should be maintained on a regular basis and hasn't really had the attention that it's needed over the years. It basically just about digging rocks, putting pipes in, putting rocks back on them. It's a way to see it. So outstanding items, items to be discussed at future budget meetings. Again, that idea that this is going to be primarily, because we're also primarily planning and designing for us, that we're really leaning into the asset management focus for our budgeting process and make decisions based off the information that we currently have, even though we don't have formal plans. We do have a group in-house that's is actively working on this. South Tofino Force Main, you may see come back for the second version of the budget. The council has seen that project in the past, and that's to deal with our capacity issues in south of Tofino. We have a number of different ideas that may reduce this project cost. And then we had a project for lift stations, skate improvements that we did not get to this year, that council may see come back for next year. Bay Street treatment is not on here, and that's a big one and a requirement. I think we need to do some work around what that looks like. Staff have gone back and are not certain that what was proposed in the past, which was upgrading the existing building there is the best idea. And so we've taken that out for now, but we'd like the council to come back and see that at some point. We are not going to fund it for that either. 4th Street sewer and road repair, I spoke briefly about that when we were talking about storm and also infrastructure. We have some significant issues with 4th Street that road is deteriorating and sliding off the mountain. We have storm sewer up there, sewer line up there that's also has some breaks in it. And we need to deal with an ongoing storm issue up there. So when I spoke about potentially pushing out Gibson Street, it might be we have to address what's happening on the top of 4th Street. Again, it's one of those projects similar to Olsen Road where it services a few number of properties, but it services properties and it's really, we really noticed this, and we knew it had potential to happen because we cambered most of our lines, and we knew there were breaks up there that we have to address, and we're going to address some this fall or in the coming month to address the band-aid some of it. But what happened during that last storm event was we flooded out our Main Street station with so much storm water that we had an overflow or a portable spill that we had to report to the province because we just were getting so much input, and we think it's coming from 4th Street, because we can monitor which stations are doing what. We can sort of isolate areas where issues are. So we think 4th is a concern, so that may come back to council as a project. We haven't really dug into that yet. It may not come back till next year, but just wanted to flag it. We're looking at our First Street dock project sheet. Asset management is reviewing that. Again, the original project sheet was based off a condition assessment. Asset management group wanted to get in there and dig into it, see if they could find some cost savings or spread out that work a little bit. First and Neil Street remediation is a project council may see the next meeting, or they may see next year. We have a number of projects in and around First and Neil that need to get addressed. And rather than just pick them up in time, we're thinking of a bigger project. So that's the intersection at the hospital and Commonwealth and Aubrey. We have some areas that are sinking. We have a tiny piece of road that we can put a sidewalk in. We have sidewalk heaving. There's just some issues in the area, and rather than just going by the pothole fill it, we're going to do a bigger project, understand what's happening, why is the ground bagging. So it's likely to involve drainage roads and a bit of service work. And then we talked about the park already today, and then we'll see some operational adjustments in our line by line items as we get through to the end of post Q3 when we see a lot of our expenses come in. So council may see some slight differences in our operational budgets between this meeting and the next meeting. I think that's it for me. I think this is back to the to close up. Any questions about those outstanding items? Thank you.
There's some next steps. We are looking at the most recent event that will take place on November 19th. And that is a public consultation that will take place at Tofino Community Hall. Again on November 19th at 4:30 p.m. Following that, we will review draft financial plan that will take us all the way to January. And, before the finishing up of the drafted the review of the drafted financial plan, we will receive the completed assessment role. That will be an important piece of information in our process of putting together the second draft of the financial plan, related mostly to taxation calculations. During all this time, the process of public consultation will continue. And the third special budget meeting is planned to happen sometime in the spring, March or April. And following that, we'll have the adoption of financial plan and tax rates. It is more of a general overview of the next steps. During the second budget meeting, we will come up with a more clear dates and of the events coming up this spring relating to the 2025 to 2029 financial plan. And this concludes our presentation on the first draft of the financial plan. And at this time, I would welcome any questions or comments.
Thanks for the presentation, everybody. Just a view. Comments, questions from council?
Just want to say thank you for, I believe, the first big presentation you've done to the giving. And we made it through in record time.
Great. Super. Well, I look forward to seeing the next one. Should we give you a number that we're like trying to, yeah? It's like 4%? No. Okay, well, next time. All right. Super. Any other comments? That's it? All right. Was that the community engagement? Was that item 4.2 at the end there? That was.
We discussed community engagement as part of the presentation, so that's just there for.
Okay. I got you. And we do have a recommendation with that. So, okay. Would somebody like to read the recommendation under 5.2?
I could move that the staff report titled Community Engagement, that's what we're moving.
Yep, you betcha.
Proposal for 2025-2029 financial plan dated November 7th, 2024 be received for information.
Okay.
Seconded by Councillor Thomas. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. All right, question period.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll now do an open call for questions for both members in the public and present in the gallery and those participating online. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to ask a question, you can do so now using the Q&A function. Before asking a question, you'll need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I'll now do a call. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. There are no current questions at this time, Mayor.
Super, we could move into closed. Well, would a councillor like to offer to move us into closed?
Councillor Anderson's gonna jump on
I
it.
can do that.
Okay.
I'm just making it big enough that I can read it. I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A and C and L. I believe that's the L of the community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent, employee relations, and discussions with officers, employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purpose of preparing an annual report under section 98, annual municipal report.
Second, Councillor Thomas. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. We're gonna take 5 minutes to move into close, or a couple minutes.